In step 5, we create a base pay structure. The internal structure developed through job evaluation is merged with external market pay rates in a pay line from which grades and ranges are developed for our compensation plan. Building a compensation plan is a simple 7-step process that will ensure your compensation is internally aligned, externally competitive, and well managed. External competitiveness is the second functional area of building a compensation plan and refers to the pay comparisons with our competitors, other organizations that hire people with the same or similar knowledge, skills, and abilities. External competitiveness requires us to complete market analysis, which we then use to create our base pay structure. In step 5, we build a base pay structure. Building a base pay structure is the process by which we create the pay grades and ranges from job evaluation and market analysis. Job evaluation points are merged with the external market pay rates in a pay line from which grades and ranges in our compensation plan are developed. Recall, more and more organizations are building base pay structures through market pricing alone. It remains my recommendation that the best base pay structures are those created by merging job evaluation with market analysis. The market line that this creates will bring job evaluation points and market analysis to life through a base pay structure like you see here. As you can see in this example, the x-axis represents the evaluation points associated with different jobs that are used to map their importance in the organization. The y-axis represents the salaries the external labor market is paying for those jobs. The result of combining this data is a scatter plot. The market line is drawn to represent the relationship between job evaluation points and the salaries paid for the jobs. It's a line that represents that average, or representative of the pay policy that we set. Market lines are developed by calculating the regression equation using statistical analysis techniques. This figure shows an example of a market line and regression equation used in setting a base pay structure. The market line uses data to place jobs having similar point values into pay grades. Pay ranges can then be computed for each pay grade, as you see by the boxes here. Let's take a deeper look. A pay grade is one of the classes, levels, or groups into which jobs of the same or similar values are grouped for compensation purposes. Pay grades help you evaluate where a specific employee should be compensated in your structure. When establishing a pay structure, organizations use pay grades to group individual jobs having approximately the same job worth. All jobs within that particular grade are paid within the same pay range because they share similar value. All jobs in a pay grade will have the same pay range, that is, a maximum, minimum, and midpoint. A pay range is the range of pay rates from minimum to maximum set for a pay grade, class, or level. It puts limits on the rates an employer will pay for a particular job. The salary range is one of the most important determinants of pay on a daily basis. Understanding the fundamentals of a salary range is critical. Every salary range, again, has a minimum, midpoint, and maximum, as you see in this sample. Some companies divide their ranges into thirds, others use quartiles. In all cases, the difference between the minimum and the maximum is referred to as the range spread. The minimum and/or the lower portion of the structure are often used as starting salaries. Regardless of range width, the midpoint is geared to the marketplace as much as possible. So the dotted line you see here really represents in this pay grade where the range meets our pay policy in relation to the external market. There are a few ways you can build pay structures. You can use your data to create a market midpoint and then build individual ranges for each and every job in your organization. Doing it this way, each job has a different pay range. Or you can choose to build grades as we just defined. 3 main reasons why pay grades are preferred over individual ranges are: they're easier to administer with fewer ranges, they allow decisions regarding internal alignment, and its easier placement of jobs are created through the use of the framework that pay grades provide. Here are 4 easy steps to establish grades and ranges for your compensation plan. First, create pay grades, where we create a structure that reflects organizational strategy. Second, we calculate the midpoint. We use market averages to calculate that midpoint. 3. Determine range widths. Salary range widths typically vary from 25 to 60%. And then 4, we calculate our minimum and maximum. we do the math to identify our min and our max. Step 1. Create pay grades. To design basic pay grades, cluster like jobs together based on job evaluation points. These clusters become your grades. It's important that you choose the right number of pay grades. You'll want to select a number of grades that allows you to appropriately distinguish between the different difficulty levels of each job. However, you will not want to have so many that the distinction between pay grades is too insignificant. More than 25 pay grades will be difficult to administer, and fewer than 5 will create very broad bands. Although no set of rules govern the establishment of pay grades, 11 to 17 grades are generally used. The number of pay grades you should use should distinguish the difficulty levels of each job, like we've talked about. The number of pay grades varies in response to a few factors. First, the size of your organization. Next, the vertical distance between the highest and lowest level jobs. Next, how you define the jobs within your organization, how well you differentiate between them, and finally, the pay increase and promotion policy for your organization. Step 2, we calculate the midpoint. Once pay grades are determined, the pay range for each grade must be established. Using the cluster's jobs established when you created your grades, average the market data for each cluster. Once jobs are clustered into grades, the respective market values should be averaged to produce an overall average market value for each grade. The average serves as the basis for your range midpoint. The goal in designing midpoints is that each grade is to calculate a midpoint that is as close as possible to the market average value for the grade. Step 3. Determine salary range widths by position. Like most things in compensation, there's no hard and fast rule here. You'll want to do what is best based on the goals of your compensation plan and philosophy and organizational mission, vision, values, and culture. Salary range spreads typically vary from 25 to 60%. Generally, the wider the salary ranges, the more opportunity there is for employees to move up in salary. You may want a broader salary range width if your organization has employees with a lot of longevity, or you want to encourage people to stay in their positions longer. Salary range spreads vary because learning time varies by job level as represented by pay grade. Use lower range spreads at the lower end of the structure and increase range spread as grades increase. It is common to have a broader pay range for higher level job grades because more discretion is needed to reflect capability and performance differentiations in pay. Finally, our fourth step, calculating the minimum and maximum of each salary range. The final step in creating a salary range is determining the minimum and maximum for the range. After you calculate the midpoint for the salary range, you'll do this final step. Once you have your midpoint and you've determined your range widths, you will calculate the minimum by taking the midpoint and dividing it by 1.xx, half of the range spread that you've determined, and the maximum by multiplying the minimum by 1.xx, the whole of the range spread. Let's take a look at a step-by-step example. To calculate the minimum, divide your range spread in half. Then take your midpoint and divide it by 1.xx, with xx equaling half of your range spread. For example, if your midpoint is $30,000 and you want your range width to be 40%, then you would divide the $30,000 by 1.20. This equals $25,000. $25,000 is your minimum for the range. To calculate the maximum, take your minimum and multiply it by 1.xx, with xx equaling your range spread. For example, if your minimum is $25,000 and your range width is 40%, you should multiply $25,000 by 1.40. This equals $35,000. $35,000 is the maximum of your salary range. After a structure is developed, we need to choose who to green or red circle. Once pay grades and ranges have been computed, the current pay of employees is compared with the proposed grades and ranges. It may be necessary and advisable to bring any employee below the minimum of the salary range up to that minimum, unless there are justifiable business reasons why the person is below the minimum. You may want to consider implementing a red circle policy for freezing the salaries of individuals who are over the top of the typical salary range of their grade, until the salary market catches up with them. Let's take a look at both situations. A red-circled employee is an employee who's paid above the range for the job. For example, assume that an employee in grade 3 has a current pay rate of $13.50 per hour. But the pay range for grade 3 is $8.98 to $13.02 per hour. The person would be red-circled, and proper administration of the pay system would make the employee ineligible for a pay increase. Several approaches can be used to bring a red-circled employees to the pay line. Although the fastest way would be to cut the employee's pay, that approach is not recommended and is seldom used. Instead, the employee's pay should be frozen until the pay range is adjusted upward. Another approach is to give the employee a small lump sum payment but not adjust the pay rate when others are given raises. Of course, an employee being paid above the maximum range is an indicator that either the pay ranges are not keeping pace or the employee should be directed to other development opportunities that would lead to a promotion or some sort of job change. An individual whose pay is below the range for a job is a green-circled employee. Promotion is a major contributor to this situation. Green-circled problems might also be the result from opportunistic hiring when employees are earning below market pay at a former employer. Generally, it's recommended that a satisfactory green-circled employee receive fairly rapid pay increases to reach the pay grade minimum. More frequent increases can be used if the minimum is a great deal above the incumbent's current pay. Now that you understand these concepts, go out and create great base pay structures for your organization, and don't forget to continue with the next step of building a great compensation plan.